The fire cracked and hissed in the center of the circle, sparks lifting into the night sky like restless spirits. Around it, the people of the Elk River tribe sat in silence, their faces painted by the shifting glow of flame. The smell of cedar smoke clung to the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of sage that the medicine man had burned only moments earlier. The night was heavy, as if the very stars leaned close to listen. An old voice rose, trembling but strong, like a drumbeat, worn by time yet steady as the earth itself. Elder Niska, her hair silver as winter frost, leaned on her carved staff. Her eyes reflected both firelight and memory. When she spoke, the hush deepened. Children ceased fidgeting, warriors stilled their hands, and even the wind seemed to bow. "My children," she said, her voice low and heavy. "Hear the prophecy that has followed our people through the generations. It is the voice of the eagle, messenger of the Great Spirit. It is a warning, sharp as talon, deep as storm." A murmur moved through the circle, but it died quickly as she lifted a along white-tipped and bound in red sinew. It caught the firelight, gleaming like a shard of moon. "The eagle," Niska continued, "flies higher than any creature of the earth. Its eyes see what we cannot. It carries the prayers of the people upward, and it carries the messages of the Great Spirit downward. The eagle watches not just the land, but the heart of man." She paused, and her words fell heavy on the silence. Then she spoke the prophecy, voice deepened by the rhythm of memory. "The one who disrespects the eagle shall walk a path of hollow victory, and his name will be swallowed by silence." The fire snapped, and sparks burst upward like fleeing spirits. Faces around the circle grew solemn. Some bowed their heads. Mothers pulled children closer. Warriors glanced at each other with unease, gripping their spears as though the prophecy had already brushed against them. Elder Niska raised her staff. Her voice shifted, flowing like the river in flood. "I have seen a vision. The eagle soars above storm clouds, its wings heavy with thunder. Its cry shakes the earth, echoing over a battlefield stained with shadows and blood. I saw a warrior lift his spear, proud and unbending. But when he turned from the eagle, his shadow was torn away, and though his body stood among men, his spirit fell into silence. His name," she broke off, and the flames seemed to flicker lower, "was never spoken again." Gasps rippled through the circle. Even the bravest hunters lowered their gaze, uneasy under the prophecy's weight. For among the Elk River people, to be forgotten was worse than death. A name carried in story and song lived forever. A name erased was a soul lost to darkness. The silence stretched long, broken only by the hiss of the fire. Then, from the edge of the circle, a sound sharp and unsettling, a chuckle. The people turned, startled. There sat Tao, a young warrior with broad shoulders and restless eyes. His hair was bound with strips of red cloth, and his chest bore the scars of past battles. He leaned back on his hands, lips curved in a smirk that cut through the solemnity. "Elders and their shadows," he muttered, loud enough for all to hear. "The eagle may soar high, but it does not carry a spear. It has never faced a man in battle. Why should we fear the cry of a bird when the strength of our arms decides victory?" Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. Some elders shook their heads, others stared at him in disbelief. Even the children looked at him wide-eyed, sensing his defiance. Elder Niska's gaze sharpened, her eyes like flint. "Be careful, Tahu. Pride blinds faster than smoke. The eagle is not just a bird, it is the spirit's messenger. To mock it is to mock the Great Spirit." Tahu shrugged, though a flicker of unease danced in his eyes before pride smothered it. He let out another laugh, rough and careless. "Let the eagle fly above the clouds. I walk the earth with strength in my hands. My enemies will know my name, not silence." The people shivered, for they had heard pride before, but rarely so sharp. Yet none dared speak against him in that moment. The fire continued its restless crackle, as if warning that the air had shifted. High above, the sky stretched dark and endless, but for those who dared look, a shape moved across the stars. Far, on the cliffs, wings spread wide, an eagle circled, its cry long, piercing, mournful cut through the night. Every ear in the circle heard it. Some bowed their heads, others whispered prayers. But Tahu, he smirked again, unmoved. The fire hissed, and Elder Niska lowered the feather to her lap. Her voice fell to a whisper, almost to herself, though all could hear. The eagle does not forget. Silence lingered after her words, silence thick as winter ice. The tribe's people felt it settle in their bones, heavy and unshakable. And as the fire dimmed, as the circle slowly broke apart and families returned to their lodges, one truth clung to every heart though none dared speak it aloud. The prophecy had been named, the vision had been spoken, and a warrior had laughed. And so, the eagle's warning hovered over him, unseen, yet never forgotten. The sun rose red over the plains, a fiery disk climbing above tall grass that bent in endless waves. The Elk River tribe's homeland stretched wide in sacred rolling plains where bison thundered in the distance, rivers winding like silver, serpents through the earth, and mountains in the far west, jagged and crowned with snow. It was said that high upon those peaks, the eagles nested close to the sky, nearest to the breath of the Great Spirit. The people moved with this land, as veins move with the heart. Hunters followed the herds. Children laughed beside the riverbanks. Women tended fires and gathered roots, their songs weaving gratitude into the wind. Each dawn began with prayer to the four directions, smoke rising to greet the spirits who watched. But among them was one who walked differently. Tahu, son of a respected warrior, carried the strength of youth and the hunger of ambition. His body was lean but powerful, his arms scarred with marks of past hunts, his eyes sharp with restless fire. From childhood, he had been swift with a bow, fearless with a spear. By the time he had seen 16 winters, he had already counted coup against enemies, striking boldly in battle where others hesitated. The people spoke of his courage. Some admired him, some feared his recklessness, and he cared only that. His name was spoken often, with weight, with AEW. Yet in Tahu's heart, there was little room for humility. Where others bowed their heads before the spirits, he lifted his chin. Where others whispered prayers, he boasted. Where others listened, he laughed. For Tahu sought glory more than wisdom, victory more than balance. That summer, when the tribe gathered for the ceremony of wings, the divide in Tahu's spirit grew clear. It was a sacred ritual, performed once each year, when the tribe honored the eagle guardian messenger and protector. Warriors painted, their faces with white and black, feathers tied into their hair, their steps echoing the flight of wings. The people circled the fire, singing the ancient song, each note rising like breath carried skyward. Elder Niska's voice led the chant, steady and strong. The medicine man lifted a carved staff, adorned with eagle feathers, calling upon the Great Spirit to watch over the tribe. Children clapped their hands. Women swayed with the rhythm, eyes lifted to the stars even though the sun still glowed faint in the west, and the warriors danced, their arms outstretched like wings. But when it came time for Tahu to join, he stepped into the circle, not with reverence, but with mockery. He spread his arms wide, exaggerating the motion, his movements stiff and foolish. He flapped as though the sacred eagle were a clumsy bird, his lips twisted in a smirk. Some of the young men laughed uneasily, but the elders' faces darkened. "Look at me," Tahu called, spinning in mock flight. "Am I not as great as the eagle, stronger, even? For I carry a spear, and my feet do not leave the ground in fear." Gasps spread. The song faltered. Children stared, confused, tugging at their mother's hands. Elder Niska struck her staff against the earth, her voice sharp as thunder. "Tahu, Enough. This is the eagle dance, not a jest. You shame not only yourself, but the spirits who guard us. But Tao only shrugged his eyes, glittering with defiance. If the eagle is angered, let it face me in battle. I fear no winged shadow. The medicine man lowered the staff slowly, his face carved with sorrow. Around him, the people's song faded into silence, the ceremony broken. Above, unseen, in the darkening sky, a lone eagle circled. Its wings beat heavy against the wind. No cry left its throat, but its silence was sharper than any scream. That evening, the tribe returned to their lodges, uneasy. Whispers followed Tahu wherever he walked. Some spoke of arrogance, others of danger. Mato, another young warrior, steady, respected, and known for his humility, approached Tahu as the fires burned low. "You mocked the eagle before all," Mato said, his tone quiet but firm. "It is not the way of honor. A warrior must fight with respect, or he will fight alone." Tahu scoffed, sharpening his spear with quick strokes. "Honor does not win battles. Strength does. When the enemy faces me, it will not be the eagle's cry they hear, it will be the crack of my spear against their skulls." Mato shook his head, sorrow shadowing his face. Strength fades. Pride blinds. Even the mightiest tree falls when its roots rot. But Tahu would not listen. He strode through the camp, head high, shoulders squared, as though daring the spirits themselves to challenge him. Children stared at him with wide eyes, unsure whether to admire or fear. Elders muttered prayers under their breath. And high above, though, the stars had now emerged. A shadow crossed the moon. That night, as Tahu lay in his lodge, the air felt heavier than usual. The fire at the lodge's heart burned low, casting restless shadows along the hide walls. The whispers of the tribe still lingered in the air, yet he closed his eyes with the ease of a man who feared nothing. But dreams are not bound by pride. As sleep took him, the air shifted. He felt wind, not the soft breath of night, but a rush. Powerful, vast. Darkness folded around him, pierced by the gleam of feathers. He looked up, and there above him spread wings, massive, endless, black against the stars. The sound came then, a beating, rhythmic, deep as a drum. Each thump rattled his bones. Each gust of wind forced his spirit downward. He tried to raise his spear, but in the dream, his hands found nothing, only the shadow of feathers. The eagle loomed larger, its eyes like burning coals, its gaze sharp enough to cut through flesh and thought alike. Its cry rose long, echoing, mournful, and the ground beneath him shook. Tahu awoke with a start, sweat streaking his brow. His fire had gone out, the lodge heavy with darkness, and though he laughed softly to himself, shaking his head, unease lingered in his chest. That night, as Tahu slept, a shadow passed over his dreams, the beating of great wings. The days that followed the broken ceremony carried a strangeness the people could not ignore. At dawn, when the women went to gather water from the Elk River, they saw flocks of birds rise suddenly from the reeds, wings thrashing in chaos, as though fleeing a shadow no eye could see. The air carried a taste of iron, sharp against the tongue. Even the fish beneath the water swam erratically, breaking the surface only to vanish again. By midday, clouds rolled in from the west, thick black, and swollen with storm. Yet the season was wrong. The elders muttered among themselves. Storms did not come in this moon. Rain pounded the earth in sudden bursts, drumming against the lodges, only to vanish just as quickly, leaving the sky eerily clear. And always, circling high above, was the eagle. It was never close enough for detail, only a shadow sweeping across the ground, wings cutting the sunlight into fleeting bars of darkness. Its cry carried down the cliffs now and then, haunting, drawn out, and sharp as flint. The people began to whisper. The eagle had been angered. One evening, as the tribe gathered for the evening meal, Elder Niska rose once more. Her voice was weary, but it carried the gravity of stone. "Children of Elk River," she said, her eyes scanning the people. "You see the signs. The animals are restless, the storms come unbidden, and the eagle circles without rest. These are not accidents. These are warnings. Balance is breaking." Her gaze fell on Tahu, and the silence that followed was heavy, pressing like the weight of the storm itself. But Tahu only smirked, tearing into a roasted piece of venison. He spoke with his mouth half full, words loud enough for all to hear. "Storms are wind and water. Birds scatter at shadows. And the eagle, it is only a feathered watcher, nothing more. My strength will guide my fate, not the cry of a bird." Some gasped at his boldness. Others lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet the elder's stare. Elder Niska struck the earth with her staff. "Strength without respect is hollow, Tahu. Do not let your pride blind you to the signs." But he only laughed, tossing the bone into the fire. Sparks leaped upward, as though stung by his arrogance. Later that night, Matu approached him. The firelight flickered between them, throwing their shadows long across the grass. Matu's face was calm but firm, his eyes steady as stone. "Tahu," he said, "you speak as though the eagle's cry is nothing. But arrogance is poison. It seeps into the heart, and soon a man cannot tell wisdom from folly." Tahu's jaw tightened, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he stood, taller than Mato, his hand resting on the Spirate's side. "Poison?" Tahu sneered. "I have faced blades. I have felt the rush of enemy charge. My courage does not falter. If poison waits for me, I will spit it out. Do not mistake your fear for wisdom." Mato did not flinch. It is not fear to honor the spirits. It is strength to walk humbly. Remember that when the time of battle comes. Their eyes locked, warrior to warrior, the fire snapping between them like the voice of something greater. Then Mato turned away, leaving Tahu alone with his pride. Days later, scouts returned with grim news. Enemies from the north were moving swiftly, their warriors painted for war, their drums echoing like thunder across the plains. The Elk River tribe began its preparations. Women gathered dried meat and filled water skins. Elders blessed the warriors with sage smoke. The medicine man painted symbols of protection on shields and faces, invoking the Great Spirit's guidance. Children watched with wide eyes as the camp shifted from daily life into the heartbeat of war. Tahu sharpened his spear with relish, grinning at the thought of glory. At last he told a group of younger warriors, "A chance to carve my name into story. Let the enemies come. My strength will scatter them like leaves in wind." But some of the younger men glanced at each other uneasily. The eagle still circled above, its shadow falling often across Tahu's face. That evening, as the tribe sat in tense silence, the eagle's cry split the sky. It was not short nor sharp, but long drawn out, echoing through the cliffs, heavy with warning. The people froze. Some pressed their hands to their hearts. Elders bowed their heads, lips moving in hurried prayer. But he looked upward, squinting against the fading sun, and smirked once more. "Let it cry," he said. "It is only a bird." The elders turned away, for they knew the prophecy's shadow was growing darker with every word. As the tribe sharpened their arrows, the eagle cried from the cliffs long and mournful. The night arrived with an eerie stillness, heavier than any before. Even the wind, which usually whispered through the grass and the lodge walls, held its breath. Tahu lay upon his bed of furs, muscles sore from the day's training, yet sleep was not simple. His mind churned with visions of the eagle's circling shadow, the storms that came too early, the scattered flocks of birds. As he drifted, the world of the waking faded, and the dream began. He stood upon a vast plain, one he recognized yet did not. The grass stretched taller than his knees, bending as if alive. Above him, clouds roiled with unnatural power, dark and purple, lit from within by flashes of lightning that made the sky quiver. And there, perched atop a spear planted deep in the blood-soaked earth, was the eagle, It was unlike any bird he had ever seen. Its feathers were glinting obsidian, edged with fire. Its eyes burned like molten gold, full of judgment and quiet fury. Its talons gripped the spear so tightly the iron bent under their strength. The spear, he realized with a chill, was not ordinary. It was stained with the blood of those who had fought in battles, yet left the earth dishonored. The eagle spoke, and though no sound emerged, Tahu understood with a clarity that pierced his soul. Honor me, and you will walk with victory. Mock me, and your shadow will be torn away. Its wings spread slowly, creating a shadow that grew larger than Tahu himself. That shadow wrapped around him, heavy, chilling, as though it weighed down both his body and his spirit. The wind carried the faint cries of warriors and children, voices from the future and past, warning and pleading. Tahu felt fear, small but sharp. His heart hammered, sweat pricking his skin even in the cold of the dream. The eagle's gaze bore into him, waiting for a response, and yet he laughed, a short, defiant laugh that echoed across the dreamscape. Victory belongs to the strong, not the feathered watchers of the sky, he said. My hands and spear carve my fate, not a bird perched upon blood. The eagle's eyes narrowed, golden coals of judgment flickering brighter. Its wings beat once, twice, thrice, and the ground beneath him shuddered. Tahu stumbled, grasping at the earth, but it was firm. Yet the chill lingered, creeping into his bones, and a shadow seemed to detach itself from his form, pulling slightly, as if testing the tether between his spirit and the world. The vision faded, the sky darkening to ink, and Tahu awoke with a start. The sweat cooled quickly on his skin, and he reached for his spear, gripping it with confidence. His heart still pounded, but he scowled. A dream, he muttered aloud. Nothing more. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the weight of the eagle's gaze. But the dream had not left him entirely. Its rhythm, the beating of wings against storm, echoed faintly in his chest. He pushed the memory aside, telling himself that courage, not fear, decided a warrior's fate. Morning found him at the edge of the river, sharpening his spear under the rising sun. Elder Niska approached, her footsteps silent against the soft earth. Her eyes, pale as dawn mist, settled on him with a weight that could bend the tallest oak. You dreamed, she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Her voice was calm, yet threaded with the tremor of concern. Tahu looked at her, eyebrow raised. I dreamed, he admitted, but it was nothing more than a trick of the mind. Spirits can whisper, but they cannot wield a spear. My fate is my own. The elder's gaze softened, yet held its power. She knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Dreams are not to be mocked, Tahu. They are messages from the spirit world. A warning, a guide, a choice placed before the heart of man. You were shown the eagle, yet you laughed. Tahu tightened his jaw. I am not afraid of wings. I am not afraid of omens. If strength and courage cannot guide a man, then what is a dream but wind and shadow? Elder Niska let her words settle, knowing argument with pride was like striking stone. She rose, and as she did, she left him with one question, soft but echoing. What would you do if the spirits themselves came to warn you? The wind caught her voice, carrying it to the riverbanks and beyond, where the eagle circled still, distant but ever present. The day passed slowly. Tahu moved among the tribe with the same bravado as before, practicing spear techniques and laughing when the younger boys stumbled in imitation. Yet even in his pride, the memory of the dream lingered, flickering like firelight in shadowed corners of his mind. And then, as the sun fell behind the mountains, stretching long golden fingers across the plains, the eagle's presence became undeniable. A shadow stretched across his lodge, vast and elongated. Tahu looked up, squinting through the last rays of light. The eagle circled, once, twice, its cry reaching far down the cliff faces. It landed briefly on a high rock, wings folded, as if watching, judging. Then it lifted again, gliding silently across the sky, before vanishing behind the mountains. Tahu shivered slightly, brushing at the goosebumps on his arms. But he shook his head, laughter soft and uneasy on his lips. "Dreams and shadows," he said. Nothing more. Yet deep within, something shifted. The tether to his spirit, however faint, had felt the eagle's weight. A shadow of warning, subtle but insistent, lingered at the edges of his heart. The tribe gathered for evening meal around the central fire, but Tahu could not fully shake the vision. He kept glancing at the cliffs to the west, half expecting the eagle to return. And in truth, it would. At dawn, the eagle's shadow crossed his lodge once more. The sun rose pale over the Elk River plains, a muted glow behind drifting clouds that threatened rain. The tribe moved with purpose now, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant drums of the north. The elders had declared that the battle was near, and the people's every action bent toward preparation. In the center of the village, warriors crouched low, painting their faces with white clay, streaks of black and red ochre. Each mark had meaning: protection, courage, clarity. Young men hesitated as the elders guided them, explaining the significance of every line and dot, teaching that every warrior carried not only a spear, but the spirits of ancestors into battle. The women sang softly, a haunting melody that rose with the wind. Their voices carried prayers for strength, for safety, for the spirits to watch over the warriors. Children watched from the edges, wide-eyed, sensing the weight of a moment larger than any game or story they had known. The medicine man moved among the warriors, staff in hand, whispering blessings over each bow, each arrow, each spear. Smoke from the sacred fire swirled upward, twisting toward the sky as if trying to reach the Great Spirit directly. And everywhere, there was a sense of order, of respect, of balance. All except one. Tahu stood at the edge of the preparation circle, spear in hand. His face bore no paint. His body held no symbols. He moved like a shadow apart from the tribe, confident and untouchable. "Why waste time on songs and chants?" he said, loud enough for the younger warriors nearby to hear. "The eagle is nothing but wind and feather. My spear is my spirit. When I strike alone. Glory will come from strength, not from whispers to the sky." Some of the younger warriors stiffened at his words, doubt creeping into their hearts. Others looked down at their spears, suddenly uncertain. A few stared at him with awe, mistaking arrogance for confidence. Elder Niska's eyes narrowed. She said nothing, but her hands tightened around her staff. The medicine man shook his head, muttering under his breath. Mato stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Tohu's shoulder. "Strength is not enough, Tohu," he said, voice calm but hard. "A spear alone cannot carry the weight of a tribe. Pride blinds, and arrogance can. Spill blood before the enemy ever touches you. Remember the eagle, remember humility, or you will learn its lesson the hard way." Tao shrugged Mato off, smirking. "I will teach the eagle a lesson instead," he said, raising his spear. "It will see me victorious. My name will echo in the songs of this tribe, and none shall doubt me." Mato's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. His eyes, however, held a promise. He would remind Tahu of humility on the battlefield, even if the young warrior refused it now. As the sun climbed higher, the preparations continued. Hunters brought down game for the warriors' last meal. Mothers tied bundles of dried herbs to be burned during the fight. Elders moved from lodge to lodge, ensuring that every person understood their role and place. The air was thick with incense, sweat, and tension, the scent of impending storm, both in the sky and upon the plains of the coming battle. The younger warriors hesitated near Tahu. They admired his skill, his fearlessness, but the doubts planted by his arrogance gnawed quietly. The eagle's cry from the cliffs the night before still lingered in their ears, a haunting reminder that power without respect was fragile. Yet Tahu strode through the camp with a swagger that seemed to defy all warnings. He practiced spear thrusts, circling alone, humming a song of his own making, as if mocking the sacred chants that filled the air. He did not notice the shadow that moved above the cliffs, nor the stillness that fell over the mountains when the wind shifted. The tribe's women watched him, eyes filled with quiet worry. The elders whispered prayers into the smoke, calling upon the Great Spirit to shield the young man from himself. Even the children sensed it, a storm, not yet fully born, growing at the edges of courage and pride. As midday faded, a drumbeat signaled the warriors to gather for the final blessing. The eagle's song began, a haunting low melody that rose and fell like the wind over the mountains. Every warrior joined, lifting arms, bowing heads, following the rhythm of wings and flight, calling upon the spirits to guide them. Tahu remained apart, arms crossed. He watched the circle, lips curled in a grin. "I need no song," he muttered. "The wind and the spear will carry me to glory." A hush fell over the elders, who watched him with a mixture of sorrow and foreboding. The wind shifted, brushing across the plains with a sudden chill, and high above, the eagle appeared. It circled silently, its wings spread wide, shadow falling, like a dark prophecy across the camp. Its eyes, golden and unyielding, focused on the young warrior who dared defy the sacred. For a moment, the world seemed to still. Even the fire sputtered, flickering as though uncertain. The eagle had come to judge, and its gaze pierced Tahu, as though it could strip him bare of pride. The younger warriors near him shivered, their confidence shaken. Batu stepped closer, whispering a final warning. "Remember this moment, Tao. The ego sees all. The spirits see all. You cannot fight what you mock." Tao only laughed softly, but the sound was hollow, even to his own ears. Above, the eagle circled once more, wings slicing through the clouds. Far above, the eagle watched silently, its wings spread like a dark prophecy. The dawn broke with a pale, trembling light, casting long shadows across the Elk River plains. The northern enemies had arrived, their painted faces twisted with anger, their drums rolling like distant thunder. Smoke from cooking fires and torches mingled with the morning mist, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and anticipation. The Elk River warriors lined the ridges, shields in hand, spears sharpened, arrows tipped with flint gleaming in the rising sun. Women, children, and elders watched from behind the protective lines, offering prayers and chanting softly, their voices carrying over the plains. The earth seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the clash that would decide the fate of all. Tahu stood at the forefront, spear gripped tightly, his chest rising with rapid breaths. He could feel the pulse of battle thrumming through his veins, a wild rhythm of excitement and fear mingling into something intoxicating. The eagle's cry had risen briefly in the morning, sharpened warning, but he dismissed it. "This is the day my name will echo in the songs," he muttered, lifting his spear. "Let the wind carry the weak. I stand alone." The battle erupted like a storm breaking over the plains. Spears shattered shields, arrows whistled through the air like silver flashes. Warriors charged, some with fear, some with fury, and all with hearts pounding beneath the weight of courage and destiny. Tahu moved like a whirlwind. He darted between enemies, striking with precision, ducking arrows, turning aside blows with the ease of a man who believed he was untouchable. Each fallen opponent seemed to feed his pride, each victory a drumbeat in his chest. "You see," he called to nearby warriors, "strength alone wins the day." But the chaos of battle was not patient with pride. Younger warriors, inspired by his confidence, pressed forward without caution. They left gaps in the line, ignored the subtle signals of shifting terrain, and moved into dangerous zones. Spears were raised at the wrong moment, shields left unguarded, and for every enemy they felled, another took their place. Tahu fought fiercely, oblivious to the danger his arrogance created. Each triumphant shout Each boastful strike echoed over the battlefield, carrying both encouragement and the seeds of disaster. High above the fray, the eagle circled. Its wings spread like shadows stitched across the sun, its sharp eyes scanning the chaos below. The majority of the warriors could not see it, and only a few caught its cry, piercing and mournful, a sound that cut through the cacophony of battle. The cry was a warning, carried on the wind, a reminder that pride without respect leaves one exposed. Tao heard it faintly, but he ignored it, attributing it to the chaos of the clash. He did not notice the way the eagle's shadow shifted across the line of his allies, moving closer to those in greatest danger. The northern warriors pressed forward, sensing the disarray among the Elk River fighters. A young hunter, following Tahu's example, was cut down before he could defend himself. Another stumbled, losing his spear and nearly falling to the enemy. Only quick intervention by Mato saved him, but even Mato's efforts were taxed, pulled thin across a battlefield that teetered between victory and disaster. Yet, Tahu's focus remained unbroken, his mind locked on glory, his body moving with unmatched speed. Each blow he struck seemed to echo in his ears, each enemy felt the drumbeat of his pride. By midday, the plains were littered with broken shields, blood-stained earth, and the cries of warriors, both fallen and wounded. The northern army began to retreat slightly, harried by the ferocity of Tahu and the disciplined lines of the Elk River fighters. Tahu's chest heaved, adrenaline burning hot. He wiped sweat and blood from his brow, smirking at the enemies who fled before him. "See," he shouted, voice carrying across the plains. "No one can stand against strength such as mine." Marto glanced at him, eyes narrowing with a mixture of fear and frustration. "Strength alone will not save you, Tahu," he muttered under his breath. "The eagle watches. Pride blinds even the sharpest eyes." Tahu laughed, waving his spear in triumph, unaware of the shadow that lingered above him. The eagle circled, higher now, its cry rising once more, a warning, unheeded, like a bell tolling across the battlefield. The battle slowed as night approached, fires from torches and the burning of supplies casting flickering light across the plain. Warriors returned to their lodges, exhausted, wounded, but victorious, though the cost was heavier than many realized. Tahu leaned against his shield, muscles quivering from the exertion. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He had struck down many enemies. He had led charges that inspired the tribe. He had felt the rush of unmatched power, and he believed himself invincible. High above, the eagle watched silently, its wings stretched wide against the darkening sky, shadowing the young warrior below. Its eyes burned like molten gold, filled with quiet judgment and promise of consequences yet to come. The winds of the plains whispered through the grass, carrying the faint, mournful echo of the eagle's cry. Tahu, lost in his triumph, did not hear it. The night closed around the camp. Fires burned low, spears were cleaned, arrows were sharpened. The tribe slept in uneasy victory, unaware that the true test had only just begun. And as night fell, Tahu believed himself invincible while the eagle still waited. The dawn rose blood-red, spilling across the plains like molten fire. The northern enemies had returned, more numerous, their banners snapping in the cold wind. The Elk River warriors stood ready, their faces painted in the sacred colors, their spears poised to meet the charge. Tao strode to the front, his muscles coiled like a panther, eyes gleaming with the fire of pride. The eagle's shadow passed overhead, long and dark, a silent reminder of the warnings that had been ignored. He looked upward and sneered. "No, bird," he shouted to the empty sky, voice carrying across the plains. "Will decide my fate. Not you, not any feathered watcher." He lifted his spear, swinging it in defiance, striking at empty air as though challenging the eagle itself. The wind shifted, the grass bent under an unseen force, carrying with it a chill that made even hardened warriors pause. And then it happened. An arrow, swift as a striking snake, flew from the enemy lines. It struck down Ino, one of Tahu's closest friends, a boy who had trained beside him since childhood. Ino's cry pierced the morning, and the plains seemed to fall silent for a heartbeat. Blood stained the earth, spreading like a dark river beneath his fallen body. Tahu froze, the spear heavy in his hands. Shock and disbelief clashed in his chest, but he pushed both aside. He had won battles before. Yet the image of Ino bleeding, eyes wide with surprise, stayed with him, lingering like smoke in his mind. The younger warriors whispered among themselves, eyes darting toward Tahu. Some saw the courage he had shown before, the victories he had carved, but others noticed only the disaster that seemed to follow wherever his arrogance led. "He brought it upon us," one muttered. "The curse of the eagle. It is his doing." The elders' eyes were sharp, the lines of their faces deepening in sorrow. Elder Niska raised her staff to silence the murmurs, but her voice trembled with grief. "Remember the prophecy," she said, her tone cutting like flint. "The one who disrespects the eagle shall walk a path of hollow victory, and his name will be swallowed by silence. Look now at the cost of pride." Tahu's chest tightened at her words, yet his pride refused to yield. He tightened his grip on his spear and turned back to the enemy, striking with renewed ferocity. The northern warriors faltered, but the fire that had driven Tahu now felt heavier, as if every swing, every thrust, carried a weight beyond muscle and bone. The battlefield became chaos. Arrows whistled, shields cracked, and the cries of warriors rose and fell like a terrible wind. Tahu fought brilliantly, but reckless. He pressed forward, ignoring signals, leaving gaps in the line. His spear found many enemies, but each strike that won him glory left another warrior vulnerable. Whispers of doubt turned to fear among the tribe. Mothers pressed hands to their mouths, praying quietly. Children hid behind rocks, eyes wide with terror. Even Mato moved cautiously, intercepting younger warriors before they fell victim to their own courage or to Tahu's disregard for balance. The eagles circled above, wings slicing through the dawn sky. Its cry rose long and mournful, a sound meant to warn, to guide, to remind. But Tahu heard it only faintly, like the echo of wind through distant mountains. He shook it off, focusing instead on the thrill of combat and the strength of his own hand. Yet the shadow of the eagle had already begun to stretch across him, unseen but heavy. By midday, the toll became clear. Several warriors lay wounded or dead, some fallen to enemy spears, others struck by their own in the frantic rush. The northern forces began to retreat, but the victory felt hollow. The whispers among the Elk River warriors had grown into a chorus. "He brings misfortune. He mocks the spirits. Will the eagle allow him to lead us?" Tahu noticed none of it, yet he could feel a subtle shift in the camp's energy. The trust that once flowed toward him now wavered, tiny cracks forming in the wall of admiration and loyalty he had built with skill and courage. Mato approached him again, voice low but sharp. "You have done more than strike enemies today, Tahu. You have struck out into the hearts of your own people. Pride blinds, and even the strongest warrior can bring ruin when he walks without humility." Tahu tightened his jaw, staring down at the blood-stained earth where Ino had fallen. I cannot control the fates of others, only the enemies. I face only my spear." Mato shook his head. "The prophecy is true. One who disrespects the eagle brings shadow, not protection. Remember it, before it is too late." Tahu said nothing, but the weight of the words pressed against his chest, heavier than any spear. By nightfall, the warriors returned to their lodges, carrying the wounded and the dead. Fires burned low, the stars shimmering above the plains like a silent audience to the cost of pride. Tahu sat by his own fire, spear in hand, staring at the embers. Triumph mingled with unease. He had survived, he had struck many enemies, yet the image of Eno's fall haunted him, A shadow of doubt, small but persistent, had taken root in his heart. Above, the eagle watched silently, its wings spread wide against a fading light, casting a shadow that seemed to creep across the camp. Its eyes gleamed golden, filled with judgment and warning. The tribe, once trusting, once inspired by Tahu's strength, began to murmur in uncertainty. They saw the cost of his pride, the recklessness that endangered them, and the omen in Eno's death. The tribe began to see him not as a protector, but as a danger. The dawn broke crimson over the plains, staining the sky with streaks of fire. The northern army had returned, greater in number and fury, their war cries rolling across the wind like thunder. The Elk River tribe braced, hearts pounding with fear and courage. Mato moved at the front, steady and measured. Each step he took carried the weight of experience, respect for the spirits, and care for those who followed him. He lifted his spear in silent prayer, eyes scanning the horizon, ready to face the storm with honor. Tahu, by contrast, strode forward, with wild energy. Every muscle coiled like a spring, his grip tight around the spear that had carried him through victories before. His eyes burned with pride, his chest swelling with defiance. He had dismissed the warnings, ignored the eagle's cries, and now he faced what he believed would be the ultimate proof of his strength. "Watch me carve my name into history," he shouted, voice ringing across the battlefield. The clash came like a wave. Spears struck shields. Arrows hissed through the air, some finding flesh, others splintering against wood. Warriors shouted, some in triumph, some in terror. The ground shook with the force of feet pounding and weapons striking. Smoke from fires and torches curled upward, mingling with the morning mist to create a haze of war. Tahu surged forward, cutting a path through the enemy ranks. Each strike of his spear felled the foe, each motion fueled by pride. He laughed as he moved, imagining himself immortal, untouchable, invincible. Above, the eagle descended, wings spread, wide feathers slicing through the smoky air. Its shadow passed over the battlefield, brushing against warriors and smoke alike, a silent omen carried in form and movement. Tahu paused briefly, noticing it. The golden eyes of the eagle met his, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to still. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of its mournful cry across the plain. "I am stronger than you," Tahu shouted, lifting his spear high. "No bird of sky decides my fate." With a furious roar, he hurled the spear toward the descending eagle. The weapon cut through the smoke, spinning through the air, but it missed. The eagle rose, wings unfaltering, gliding beyond the reach of Tahu's defiance. The moment stretched. The air felt heavy, as if the plains themselves waited with bated breath. Tahu's chest heaved with exertion and rage, the thrill of battle, mingling with the sting of failure. And then the enemy struck. A warrior lunged from the shadows, spear piercing through the gap Tahu had left in his reckless charge. Pain exploded in his side, knocking him off balance. He stumbled, spinning, in the dust, trying to regain his footing. Around him, the battle continued, but the clarity of his own danger was undeniable. Tahu fell hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. Blood seeped into the dirt, soaking his furs. He struggled to rise, eyes darting across the battlefield, but the enemy's press was relentless. He was surrounded, his strength and skill no longer enough to carry him through. The eagle circled above, closer now, its cry sharper than steel, piercing through the clamor of war. Its golden eyes were fixed. Upon him, judgment and sorrow mingled in their gaze. Tahu's chest heaved with pain and disbelief. Pride, that had carried him so far, now weighed like a stone, dragging him toward a reality he had refused to see. Mato rushed forward, intercepting the nearest enemies, shouting encouragement to the Elk River warriors, moving with precision, strategy, and humility. He saved lives that Tahu had endangered, his steady hand guiding others through the chaos. But Tahu lay in the dust, struggling to breathe, his limbs heavy, his vision narrowing. The cries of the battlefield seemed distant now, the clash of spears and shields reduced to a murmur beneath the eagle's gaze. Above him, the eagle circled once more, wings slicing the smoke, cry echoing across the plains like a final warning. The young warrior realized, too late, that his defiance had brought him to the edge of ruin. He had mocked the spirits, ignored the prophecy, and sought glory without honor. The battlefield raged on around him, but in that moment, Tahu's world narrowed to the eagle above, the pain in his body, and the dawning understanding that some power is greater than skill, greater than pride, and far beyond the reach of even the strongest warrior. The tribe, witnessing the fall of their once celebrated young warrior, began to whisper in awe and fear. The prophecy, the warnings, the signs all now echoed in their minds. Tahu tried to lift his head, to reach for the spear he had thrown in defiance, but his strength failed. Darkness edged his vision, mingling with the smoke and dust of the battlefield. He had fought valiantly, yes, but in arrogance, he had left the path of honor. As he lay in the dust, the eagle circled once more, its cry sharper than steel. The sun sank behind the mountains, casting long, trembling shadows across the battlefield. Smoke and fire mingled with the evening mist, curling over broken spears, splintered shields, and the fallen warriors of both sides. Amid the chaos, Tahu lay on the cold, blood-stained earth, his body broken, his breath shallow and ragged. Around him, the Elk River warriors tended the wounded, carried the dead, and gathered their scattered courage. Victory had been theirs, but the triumph felt hollow. In the midst of celebration, one figure lay apart, silent, and forgotten by those who had once followed him with admiration. Tahu's eyes fluttered open, the world tilting and warping around him. Pain racked his body, yet his mind burned with the images of the eagle. High above, its wings spread wide against the dying light, casting a shadow over the plains. Its cry, once a warning, now felt like final judgment, echoing in the hollows of his chest. He reached weakly toward the sky, voice trembling, raw with desperation. "Eagle, I have fought, I have struck down enemies. Honor me." The eagle paused, its golden eyes fixed upon him. For a heartbeat, Tao believed salvation had come, that perhaps the spirit world would receive him, that his pride might yet be forgiven. But then, in a motion both deliberate and silent, the eagle turned away. Wings stretched, it lifted into the evening sky, vanishing beyond the mountains, leaving him alone. A cold weight settled in Tahu's chest, the ground beneath him felt harder than stone. Breath left him in ragged gasps. His spirit, untethered, wandered uncertainly in the spaces between life and death, seeking guidance that would not come. The fires of the battlefield, the cries of the living and the dead, all faded into a haze. He floated a shadow without anchor, caught between worlds. He saw glimpses of the ancestors, the elders, the warriors who had passed before him. They turned their eyes away, silent witnesses to the folly of pride. No hands reached to guide him, no song carried his spirit into the light. Tahu realized, with a horror that burned hotter than any spear wound, that his choices had severed him from the path of honor forever. Back among the tribe, the aftermath of battle settled heavily. The wounded were tended with care, the dead were laid upon funeral pyres, and the air carried the smoke of purification and prayer. Elders recited chants to the Great Spirit, invoking protection and balance, offering thanks for survival. Yet no song, no chant, honored Tahu. Where once he had been celebrated, his name now hung in silence. Mothers and children passed by the lodge where he had rested, lowering their heads. Warriors moved with grim determination, wary of repeating the arrogance that had led to such consequences. Whispers traveled like shadows across the camp. He brought the eagle's curse upon us. He disrespected the spirits, and his name will not live among ours. Better to remember him as a warning, not as a hero. Even Mato, who had once fought beside him, spoke little. His gaze, steady and sorrowful, held the knowledge that Tahu's story had ended not in triumph, but in emptiness. Tahu's spirit drifted above the plains, untethered, neither alive nor fully departed. He watched the tribe celebrate their survival, their faces lit with the glow of fire and relief. He longed to join them, to feel the warmth of belonging. Yet he remained invisible, a shadow caught in his own mistakes. He remembered the prophecy, now carved into his mind with unbearable clarity. The one who disrespects the eagle shall walk a path of hollow victory, and his name will be swallowed by silence. The words were not merely a warning, they were truth, manifest in the absence of honor, in the denial of guidance, in the cold solitude of his spirit. And as the night deepened, Tahu understood the finality of his defiance. He had sought glory without humility, strength without respect, and now he was unmoored. The eagle's cry echoed faintly in the distance, sharp and haunting, a reminder that the path he had chosen led only to emptiness. Would you want to be remembered or forgotten, like dust in the wind? Tahu drifted higher, passing over the sacred fires, the smoke curling toward the stars. He tried to reach for the voices of the elders, the laughter of friends, the songs of the tribe, but all were distant, fading into silence. His spirit wandered, a shadow without guidance, unable to find peace. The tribe, victorious in battle, yet scarred by loss and warning, turned inward. They celebrated their survival, honored those who had acted with courage and wisdom. But Tahu's name was absent from every song, every story, every whispered memory. His name was erased, and his shadow never walked among the ancestors. Years passed over the Elk River plains. Seasons shifted, rivers carved new paths through the land, and children grew, laughing among the sacred mountains and valleys where their ancestors had walked. Fires burned nightly, carrying prayers to the Great Spirit, and the tribe continued its cycle of life, learning and remembrance. Yet some stories were remembered differently. Among them was the tale of a young warrior whose courage had once shone brightly, but whose pride had cast a long shadow. Though his deeds in battle were known, the elders never spoke his name. It was swallowed by silence, a lesson more powerful than any spoken memory. Around the sacred fire, children gathered, eyes wide with curiosity. They leaned forward as Elder Niska spoke, her voice soft, yet carrying the weight of wisdom. "There was once a warrior who sought glory without respect," she said. "He mocked the eagle, the messenger of the Great Spirit. He thought strength alone would carry him to honor. But the eagle watches all, and those who walk without humility are not guided by the spirits. Their paths are empty, and their names fade from memory." A hush fell over the children. Some shivered, imagining the young warrior's fall, and the emptiness that had claimed him. "Remember this," the elder continued, pointing to the sky. "The eagle is the messenger of the Great Spirit. To dishonor it is to dishonor life itself. Watch the eagle soar. Listen to its cry. Learn respect, humility, and balance, for these are the true marks of a warrior." In the years that followed, the eagle became more than a bird in the sky. It became a symbol in ceremonies, its feathers sacred, its presence honored in every dance and song. Warriors carried tokens of its feathers into battle, not to summon luck or strength alone, but to remind themselves of the guidance of the spirits, the importance of humility, and the weight of responsibility. Parents told their children that to witness an eagle overhead was a blessing, a reminder to honor the balance of life. They spoke of courage, but tempered it with respect. They spoke of strength, but paired it with wisdom. And in every story, the shadow of the young warrior lingered unseen, unnamed, a cautionary echo in the wind. The tribe learned from his folly. The younger warriors trained diligently, not only in skill and strategy, but in the sacred teachings. They painted their faces with meaning, lifted their voices in chants that carried prayers to the sky, and kept the eagle's guidance. In their hearts, the mountains remained as ever, their peaks touching the clouds. The rivers flowed steadily, carrying memories of those who had passed. And high above, the eagle continued to soar, wings spread wide, eyes sharp and watchful. Its cry, long and haunting, reminded the tribe that the balance of life is fragile, and that disrespect toward the spirits brings consequences no strength can overcome. Even the warriors who had once fought beside the fallen young warrior remembered the lesson. Mato, now an elder himself, would recount the tale without naming him, emphasizing that honor is not claimed through force alone. Strength without respect is weakness. Courage without humility is hollow. Only balance brings true honor. What lesson will you carry from the eagle's shadow? The tribe's children would look to the sky during their ceremonies, imagining the eagle circling high, a messenger not only of the Great Spirit, but of wisdom itself. They would see the power in its flight, and the solemn reminder of what happens when pride blinds the heart. Stories of battles and victories remained, but the cautionary tale of the nameless warrior lingered, a shadowed memory woven into the fabric of every lesson. He was remembered not for triumph, but for the cost of arrogance, the hollowness of strength, untempered by respect. The eagle, ever vigilant, glided above the rivers, above the plains, above the fires of the tribes, sacred lodges. Its shadow stretched across the land, a reminder to all who lived below that the spirits watch, that the balance of life is sacred, and that true honor is earned through humility, courage, and wisdom. And so, the tribe lived, learning from the past, honoring the guidance of the spirits, and never forgetting the silent lesson of the young warrior whose name had faded, but whose story had shaped generations. The eagle still soars, its cry echoing across the mountains and valleys, a sacred presence in a world that remembers both the living and the lessons left by those who walked carelessly. And so, the eagle still soars up the rivers, above the plains, above the memory of those who forgot to honor.